SuperFlex fantasy football drafts might seem complicated at first, but if you follow the draft strategy that I outline in today's video, it will be easy as 1, 2, 3, shout out to the Jackson 5. Inside of today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my complete draft strategy for SuperFlex and 2 quarterback leagues, as well as giving you guys some examples of how I would actually look to utilize this strategy in a home league fantasy football draft, as well as doing a SuperFlex mock draft at the end of today's video. So if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video whether you are new to the channel or not. It would help me out a ton. And so without further ado, let's get into my SuperFlex / 2 quarterback draft strategy for 2025 fantasy football. Now, to me, there is a clear strategy in SuperFlex leagues that I have been utilizing over the last few years, and I have found some great success doing so. It is important to understand just how important the quarterback position is in SuperFlex leagues. For all intensive purposes, in SuperFlex leagues, they are basically a 2 quarterback league. Any week that you are not starting a second quarterback inside of that SuperFlex spot in your lineup, you are drastically hurting your chances of winning. Sure, maybe 1 week out of the 17-week season, you end up having a wide receiver or running back spot. That's fine, but that week you might potentially be leaving yourself open to getting your back blown out. Quarterbacks provide a very safe floor in terms of points, and they also have significant upside weekly, and that is true whether you play in a 4-point per passing touchdown quarterback league or 6-point per passing touchdown, but it is obviously increased in 6-point leagues. Now, the way I think of things is in a normal fantasy football league where you're just starting one quarterback, for a lot of people, the quarterback position is almost an afterthought, right? A lot of people aren't super worried about drafting Allen or Lamar early. Sure, some people do that, and some people find that they win their league if they take the Josh Allen, the Lamar Jackson, the Jaden Stormy Daniels early, and I get that. But some people are perfectly fine completely punting off the quarterback position and, you know, taking 2 of them late, or maybe just taking 1 late and then every week looking at the matchups and picking up a new quarterback every single week. And then they're able to hammer the wide receivers and running backs early in drafts due to how much of your actual roster allotment goes to the running back and wide receiver position. Now, in a SuperFlex league, the quarterback position, or a 2 quarterback league, is the most important position. And that is why you are going to see so many of them end up going early. In some leagues, you might see around 8 quarterbacks go inside of the first 12 picks, where that would be absolutely ludicrous in a 1 quarterback league. In a majority of leagues, a single quarterback doesn't even go in the first round. So a way to think about the quarterback position in a SuperFlex league is how running backs were drafted in prior years. Now, recently, we've kind of seen the pendulum swing towards wide receivers coming off the board earlier on in drafts, but just a couple of years ago, you might see 8 running backs go with the first 12 picks. So that is kind of how I think of the quarterback position. It is like the old version of running back. So now that you understand how important the quarterback position is in a SuperFlex or a 2 quarterback league, we'll break down a couple of talking points. First, we're just going to be talking about very basic strategy here. 2 quarterbacks in the first 3 or 4 rounds, depending on how early and often the quarterbacks are going. Sometimes you might end up with 2 through 3 rounds. Sometimes it might be 2 through 4 rounds. Another main talking point is to fade the tight end position, thus attacking running backs and wide receivers when you are not drafting quarterbacks early on. Now, the reason why we don't look into drafting tight ends early is because the tight end position is such a small portion of your lineup once you're adding that extra quarterback / SuperFlex spot, or even Unless if you are in a league that maybe has 3 wide receivers, 1 flex, or 2 wide receivers and 2 flexes, which has become a very normal thing inside of SuperFlex leagues. So unless a guy like Brock Bowers or, for example, Trey McBride or George Kittle meet Timbers, right? Unless they fall multiple picks behind ADP, I am probably just going to stick with my game plan and draft quarterbacks, running backs, or wide receivers early. A good way for you to figure out which quarterbacks you want to actually be targeting in the first 4 rounds is to look at your fantasy football rankings. Maybe you made your own fantasy rankings. Maybe you just look at consensus rankings. You look at a different YouTuber's rankings, or you look at mine. And what you want to do is go into those rankings and draw a line where you would feel comfortable starting a quarterback in a 1 quarterback league. Meaning, if your home league started just 1 quarterback, which quarterbacks would you be comfortable having as your starter in week 1? You're going to draw that line, and then you are going to be able to figure out which quarterback you want to be selecting as your 2 quarterbacks. We'll actually throw my rankings on the screen and discuss that. Now, it is also important to note that if the draft falls the way where everyone is going Thor mode, hammer time, shout out MC Hammer on the quarterback position, and you're able to maybe scoop up a Bijan, and then you follow that up with Mr. Malik Neighbors, then you get another elite option at the running back or wide receiver position, then you may be better off just getting that falling value and calming down on the quarterbacks and maybe picking up some lower end quarterback options. So here are the top 26 quarterback rankings that are up on my Patreon for $12.50. On this list, in a normal 1 quarterback league, I would be comfortable starting any of the quarterbacks that are in my top 5 tiers weekly. Now, my rankings are going to be different than consensus and different from what you might see on ESPN, Yahoo, NFL Sleeper, wherever you do your fantasy football drafts. So while I might have a quarterback like Kyler Murray, he is, based on expert consensus rankings, ranked as a top 10 quarterback, the quarterback 9. So since he's my quarterback 13, unless he ends up falling, you're probably not going to draft Kyler. But hopefully you still understand the point is those are the guys that I would feel comfortable with being my top 2 quarterbacks in the SuperFlex League. Again, not based upon drafting, because again, I'm not drafting Kyler Murray ahead of ADP just because he's Kyler Murray. I would be fine waiting and taking a guy like Justin Fields, who I've ranked higher than Kyler Murray. Now, you could also be in a scenario where you might be getting iced out at the quarterback position, completely iced out, right? And you're getting the Bijan, the Malik Neighbors, then you're following that up and drafting another running back or a wide receiver, right? And if you are doing that, it is also important to understand that you could get potentially completely iced out. So in that scenario where you're picking up all the scraps while everyone's going hammer mode on the quarterback position, you definitely want to still make a point of getting a quarterback within the first 4 rounds, because if you're starting week 1, Aaron Rodgers and Anthony Richardson, or Aaron Rodgers and Michael Penix Jr., right? That isn't necessarily the best strategy, in my opinion, and you're going to feel like you're severely lacking weekly when you go up against some motherfucker that has, for instance, Lamar Jackson as their QB1, and their super flex might be Jared Goff, right? You're definitely going to be feeling pretty bad when you go up against those teams. It is also important to understand that you are going to want to draft a 3rd quarterback. Now, you don't necessarily want to force it, but we've already discussed just how important it is to have 2 quarterbacks in your lineup every single week. But the 3rd quarterback doesn't need to fit that premise that we discussed earlier, right? Where they're a top 5 tier guy going all the way down to Geno Smith, right? You could be talking about Michael Penix Jr. You could be talking about that 3rd quarterback being mono man Sam Darnold or even Aaron Rodgers, and I would feel fine with those guys being my 3rd quarterback. The next key focal point we are going to discuss is how the roster settings, the roster construction of your league can ultimately change your draft strategy. For most Superflex or 2 quarterback leagues, we'll see one of 2 roster formats. That's going to be 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, Superflex / 2nd quarterback, and then 1 flex. Maybe you have a kicker, defense. The bench spots don't really matter. Or, like in my home league, it's 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a Superflex, and then 2 flexes. In some instances, this may be 3 wide receivers and 1 flex, but I would look at those formats the exact same way. In the earlier example with just 1 flex, I am going strictly off of best player available minus tight end, unless, of course, one ends up falling to be a clear, blatant value where you want to be drafting the Brock Bowers, the Trey McBride, the George Kittle early on. In a league where you could start 2 flexes or 3 wide receivers and 1 flex, I put more emphasis into wide receivers because I think if you could start off your draft with potentially 3 or 4 wide receivers that could end up being big for you weekly, that could be a huge advantage over your league. Again, best player available is still the best strategy, but I do lean into the wide receiver position more if it's like a tiebreaker in those kind of a format. Next, we will look into how my home league draft went last year, my SuperFlex home league draft, and then we will pivot into 3 drafts I did with a couple of my friends from an early pick, a middle pick, and a late pick inside the first round and show you guys how I will look to utilize this strategy. Now, my home league is very quarterback heavy. Is every home league draft going to be like this? Fuck no, baby. You might see the exact opposite. People might not even understand how SuperFlex works. They didn't watch today's video. They don't understand it. And maybe there is a league where someone drafts Josh Allen at pick 2 and people don't understand what's going on and they follow that up and they're able to get in the second round a guy like Lamar Jackson somehow, right? They are able to start super elite at the quarterback position because people don't understand how it works. But in my league, it's almost overcorrected to the point where everyone is spamming the quarterback position. Last year in the first 3 rounds, 10 quarterbacks went in the first round out of 12 picks. 6 quarterbacks went in the second round, meaning that through 24 picks, 16 quarterbacks have been taken. 7 quarterbacks in the third round, meaning that through the first 3 rounds, 23 quarterbacks were selected. Now, I believe that this is an anomaly. This is not going to be how most home league drafts go, but this could show an example of how you would panic. Me personally, I started to panic a little bit and I drafted Jordan Love and Brock Purdy. I probably would have been better off picking up some running back values there and maybe fading the quarterback position, but it's also shows you that, hey, if I didn't pick at least one quarterback there through my first 3 picks where I got Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, and Puka Nacua, I ended up making the playoffs in this league. I may have been stuck with a quarterback that I didn't want at all because fucking Will Levis got picked ahead of me. So again, it is very important to understand that not every league will be this quarterback heavy, but if you are in a league where you've been playing for the last couple of years, you want to go into the history and check how your league has drafted because that will give you a very good insight into how your draft might go this year. I have a feeling that my league will be very quarterback heavy early on. And that draft is taking place tonight, and I'm going to be taking a vlog, making a whole video out of it that you guys will be able to watch whenever I'm done editing it. I'm not Martin Scorsese, so it might take me a while to edit that down, but you guys will be able to see that. Before we get on into the examples and then the mock draft, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious, you'll get your free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash, as well as getting my draft rankings for free with a $10 deposit, and you play on the site. If you don't know what Underdog is, it is the best place to play best ball fantasy football. If you're like, Nick, what is best ball? Best ball is the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft and that's it. There's no waivers, no trades, no in-season management. Underdog automatically puts the highest scores into your lineup at the end of every single week, and the prizes over on there are huge. Best Ball Mania, their flagship contest, $15 million in total prizes, $2 million to first place, just $25 to enter. They also have smaller contests like the puppy, $5 to enter, $100,000 to first place. So make sure you guys do check that out. Come draft with me on there over on Underdog. So now we will pivot into my first example where I'm going to be drafting at pick number 2 with my friends Kevin, Ravi, Matt, and John so that we get a more accurate look at how a actual draft would go compared to if you were just drafting up against bots. This is the setup of my home league. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flexes, 1 super flex, a defense, and 5 bench spots. So now that we are in the draft board here, we are picking from pick 2, like I said. Our team was Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, Bo Nix, Omarion Hampton, Devontae Adams, George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, Ricky Pearsall, Tyrone Tracy, Matthew Stafford, Josh Downs, Brenton Strange, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, Keenan Allen, and the LA Rams defense. So we followed our strategy. Again, while this was a 2-flex league, we didn't necessarily go hammer time on the wide receiver position early, but I did stick with best player available, and we got Derrick Henry falling in the late 2nd round, and in the 4th round, instead of going wide receiver, we just picked our highest ranked player, which would be Omarion Hampton. So we were able to get 2 quarterbacks within the first 4 rounds. We got 2 within the first 3 rounds. And then after we took our 2 running backs, we know that, hey, since we have 2 running backs that I believe have the upside to be elite, we should probably pivot away from running back and start taking a bunch of wide receivers, where we followed that up with Devontae Adams, George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, and Ricky Pearsall. Now, I believe Superflex drafts are probably the drafts where you need to mock draft the most for, because of how much variance there could be from one league to another. In this draft, we saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks go inside of the first round. Like we saw in my Superflex draft that we just discussed, in that league, 10 quarterbacks went in the first round. So on Sleeper, they don't pay me any fucking money. They should, because I love their draft platform, but they don't pay me anything. On here, you can actually adjust every single pick inside of the draft. So you could just straight up put inside the draft around you 8 quarterbacks in the first round, 10 quarterbacks in the first round around you, and see how the draft falls that way. This does feel pretty typical outside of just 1 quarterback going inside of the 2nd round, which is how I was able to pick up that value on Bo Nix inside of the 3rd round. But if you don't think that's possible, then you could have easily went Bo Nix here at the 211 and then picked a guy like Bucky Irving here at the 3.2, right? And you still would have been able to follow that strategy. And we were able to also pick up Matthew Stafford later to be my 3rd quarterback. Now, when you're thinking about picking a 3rd quarterback, you want to make sure that you are not too late to the party, but you also don't want to be the guy that smashes the button too early. And what I mean by that is you don't want to just pick Matt Stafford in like the 7th round when you still haven't filled out a majority of your roster, and you want to be waiting until like the 10th-ish round, but you also don't want to get completely iced out and your 3rd quarterback is fucking Shedeur Sanders, who may not start a single game this season. We also followed our strategy of going with a tight end late and grabbed Brenton Strange with the 12.11, so now we are going to pivot into our middle round pick draft. In that draft, we are picking from the 5 hole with the same exact guys that we drafted with last time. This team is going to be Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Brock Purdy, T. Higgins, Jared Goff, Devontae Adams, George Pickens, Stephon Diggs, Ricky Pearsall, Matthew Stafford, Jordan the Numbers Mason, what do they mean? Tank Bigsby, Brenton Strange, Jatavion Sanders, and the Rams defense. So again, we talked about this early on in the video. You want to be able to adapt. If the quarterbacks aren't flying off of the board and you can get Jared Goff in the 5th round, you don't necessarily want to reach, and that is exactly what we did. We waited. We didn't follow our 100% staple rule of thumb of drafting 2 quarterbacks in the first 4 rounds, but again, that's why it is important to understand that you want to adjust to the draft. You don't want to just come into the draft saying, I need 2 quarterbacks in the first 4 rounds, and then reach on a quarterback when you did not have to. I like this team a ton, and if you're not as confident in Brenton Strange or later on tight end, that's why we ended up drafting 2. We were able to get 3 quarterbacks. We have our 2 staple double hero running backs with Bijan and Saquon Barkley, some value I simply could not deny, and then we picked up 2 running backs later that could be used in bye weeks or if there was an injury, knock on wood, but ultimately this team is heavily relying on the top of Bijan and Saquon Barkley, just like last draft, just 5 quarterbacks go inside of the first round. In this draft, we are drafting out of the 11th hole out of 12 teams. This time, just Ravi and Johnny were with me. We did CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, Caleb Johnson, Tony Pollard, Jordan Mason, Matthew Goldenscar, Ramondre Stevenson, Braylon Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Hunter Henry, and the LA Rams defense. Now, this draft we did pretty different than our last two drafts, meaning we didn't take any running backs early. We went with 4 wide receivers and 2 quarterbacks with our first 6 picks, and then we had to adjust after that and start to just spam the running back button because I feel very confident in CeeDee Lamb's ability to be a top 3 wide receiver. I feel very confident that Malik Neighbors should be a top 5 wide receiver. I like Brock Purdy as a top 10 quarterback, Dak in the top 12 to 14 range. DJ Moore is a little bit more dicey. We could have just went with Travion Henderson there, but I wanted to do something a little bit different, not just spam running backs every time early on. We followed that up with Metcalf, and then what we did with the running backs is just took a bunch of them. Try to get the running back by numbers, because if you avoid the running back position later, you definitely want to get a bunch of them in numbers and hope that maybe injury luck goes your way. Maybe you're able to also just pick up running backs, right? Because players get hurt all the time. Maybe a running back goes down that someone else has. You have higher waiver priority. You blow your fab budget on him. You're able to pick up a potential league-winning running back off of the waiver wire. So starting off in week 1, Caleb Johnson and Tony Pollard would be our starters. Do I feel the best about that? Fuck no, baby. But as the season goes on, maybe Jordan Mason really does become the RB1 in Minnesota. Maybe Ramondre Stevenson's taken away a bunch of play time from Henderson. Maybe Braylon Allen really is that guy, and it's a 1A, 1B for the Jets. So if you punt the running back position early, you definitely want to be taking them in volume late. Now that you have seen a couple of examples, we will now do a full mock draft with me drafting in front of your eyes so you can see how my brain works doing a super flex draft like this. Now we are over on FantasyPros to do my home league draft. We are going to be following the exact roster settings of my home league draft and drafting from the 9th position where I am picking tonight. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end, 2 flex, super flex, defense, and 5 bench spots. We're drafting up against the expert rankings over on FantasyPros because I don't know if drafting up against like ESPN ADP or NFL ADP would completely screw this thing up because we are going to be doing a super flex draft. So the draft here begins with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Bo Nix, Pat Mahomes. Now this is where it is important to have done mock drafts because you don't want to panic. You don't want to panic. You want to just take the best player available. I get that I like Baker Mayfield a ton, but if Bijan falls to me at the 109, I am taking him every single fucking time. I am going to potentially have a quarterback one that I don't like as much, but I love the idea of Bijan Robinson potentially finishing as the RB1, and I think it would be malpractice taking Baker there when there's such great value on Bijan as the 109. I have noticed that over on FantasyPros, they are very, very, very quarterback heavy. So if your draft is more quarterback heavy, you probably want to draft on FantasyPros, whereas if your draft is less quarterback heavy, you probably want to do it on Sleeper. So just 2 picks inside the first round were not quarterbacks. Baker, Justin Herbert, Justin Fields come after us, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and Caleb Williams. Now we're going to go quarterback. We're going to go with our highest ranked quarterback, which is Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has an incredibly easy schedule. He performed last year despite the fact that everyone around him ended up getting hurt. Healthy Christian McCaffrey should help him out. George Kittle, as well as hopefully Juwan Jennings comes back. Brandon Ayuk will come back as well. They also have Slick Rick, Ricky Rolex, Ricky Pearsall, who I feel confident as well. I think the 49ers are set up to smash this season, and based upon the fact that they have a cupcake schedule, that makes perfect sense. After Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Jahmyr Gibbs, Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, BTJ, Jared Goff, Jordan Love Me Tender, Love Me Sweet, Ashton Genty, Drizzy Drake London, Jackson Smith Najigba, as well as Lad McConkey. So if we wanted to get our quarterback 2 here, I am perfectly fine taking Drake May. Perfectly fine here doing that, and that is what we are going to do. Now, if you are like, likely, probably 2 quarterbacks go before we make another pick. And likely, at least 1 quarterback goes, right? Because this team has 2 quarterbacks, so they're not going to take a second one. But this team could take one, and same with team number 12. So I'm just going to get Drake May here. I'd be fine also selecting Bryce Young, but bye weeks are a lot more important at the quarterback position in this kind of a super flex league, right? You don't want to be pulling up to week 14 and not having, because then you have to draft 4 quarterbacks, which is just very difficult to do. So we're going to go ahead and get Drake May. His bye week is week 14, so that also does put a wrench into things here. So Maybe we will just wait and then pick up a guy like JJ McCarthy here because his bye is bye 6. So we will just wait because of that. Because again, once bye week 14 comes, normally we say, oh, it's fine if you have multiple running backs on week 14. And I think that's fine at running back, wide receiver. But at quarterback, we definitely want 2 in our lineup. So that would make me adjust here. We'll just go BPA, best player available, Pro Bowling Association, and go with Devon Achane. If you're like, Nick, Devon Achane wouldn't be there, I'd be fine with Henry, Brown, Jacobs, or Irving there as well. So we'll go with Achane. So we start off with Purdy, Robinson, as well as Achane. Brock Bowers goes, Bucky Irving goes, Drizzy Drake May goes, A.J. Brown, C.J. Stroud, as well as Garrett Wilson. Now, I want to be all over Trevor Lawrence pause in fantasy football because I love Liam Cohen, but I still feel a little bit gross when it just comes with Trevor Lawrence as a whole. So I think I'm just going to go with JJ McCarthy. Hope he breaks out in his quote-unquote rookie season. He has all the weapons around him. We know that Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback whisperer. He was able to have Sam Darnold playing great, so why not JJ McCarthy? That's kind of my thoughts on him. After JJ McCarthy, we see Tyreek Hill, Trey McBride, Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams, Breece Hall, Michael Penix Jr., Higgins, Josh Jacobs, Marvin Harrison Jr., Mike Evans, Alvin Kamara, Matthew Stafford, Terry McLaurin, Kyron Williams, and Jonathan Taylor. So now we are going to go ahead and just continue with best player available. And for me, this is a little bit different, out of the ordinary. Shout out to Alex Warren. That was our wedding song at my wedding in April. Shout out Nicole. Omarion Hampton would be the best player available for me. In a home league draft with one quarterback, I think he should be going in the early 3rd round. I believe in him heavily. I believe in this Chargers offense. I know they did just lose a lineman, but I'm still confident in Hampton and out of this rushing attack. So while it will hurt who our wide receiver 1 is, I think having Bijan, Achane, and Hampton, who I could see all finishing inside the top 5 at the running back position, to me, that is too much value to pass up on. After Hampton, Rashee Rice, George Kittle, Kenneth Walker, Jameson Williams, DK Metcalf, and Chuba Hubbard, which now means we just have to spam the wide receiver button. DJ Moore or Cortland Sutton, it's one of the 2 here. Just depends how you want to lean with things. Personally, I lean more with DJ Moore, but I also think Cortland Sutton's a little bit safer. So we're going to go with the more safer option here since we are kind of punting the wide receiver position. So I want to get a little bit more safety. Now we're back up on the clock. You could pause there. You wanted to see the whole draft board, but I don't think the whole draft as a whole is super important, just kind of talking through the strategy here. Next, we will go with our next highest ranked wide receiver, which will be Stefon Diggs. It's going to be a little bit of a reach, so we could go Pickens and then hope to get Diggs back, but I can't guarantee that that will happen. I think that Stefon Diggs is on a rocket ship right now, straight to space for fantasy football, the clear alpha wide receiver in New England with not the best competition, with a quarterback in Drake May that everyone expects to take that second-year leap, with Stefon Diggs playing so well down the stretch in Houston last season when he was healthy. I guess not down the stretch, but in that stretch of games where he did play before he ended up getting hurt, he looked mighty fine, like Sidney Sweeney in Euphoria, so I'm very confident in Stefon Diggs. After Stefon Diggs, George Pickens, Rome Odunze, Jerry Jeudy, Aaron Jones, Matthew Goldenscar, as well as Chris Godwin. Xavier Worthy has now fallen into a range where I would pick him. Normally, I'm pretty off of Xavier Worthy because I think that once Rashee Rice returns, Xavier Worthy is going to get kicked to the curb, hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. And then they will end up using Rashee Rice more. But as a high upside pick, we went a little bit safer with the other wide receivers, and I feel confident in my running back room. We will go Worthy here. If Worthy wasn't available, we'd probably just take the soft layup on taking Jacoby Myers there or taking Ricky Pearsall. So now is the point where I'm starting to think of taking a second quarterback, especially since it's J.J. McCarthy and Brock Purdy. Geno Smith would be the guy that I would take here. I understand not loving Geno Smith and not thinking Geno Smith is this great player, but I do understand, I do truly believe that under Pete Carroll, this offense is going to work much better. I like Jacoby Myers, I like Deontay Thornton, I like Jack Besh, I like Brock Bowers, obviously. So I think this is an offense set up to succeed, and Geno Smith's also a little bit sneaky, underrated. So I'll reach on my quarterback too, just because I don't love J.J. McCarthy as much. So we're back up on the clock here, and we're just going to get our stack here. Now, Jordan Addison is going to be useless for the first 3 games. First 3 games, he's not going to do shit because he's suspended. This guy lives inside of the end zone. So when he's healthy, him and JJ McCarthy, we get the stack. I don't think you have to stack in SuperFlex. We haven't actually talked about that thus far, but I do think stacking is a little bit more beneficial in a SuperFlex league. So we will go ahead and draft Jordan Addison Ray there. And we still need to keep taking wide receivers because, again, Jordan Addison won't be available for the first 3 weeks. And we do have a competent running back core with those big 3. So we're just going to keep taking the best wide receivers available. Next, we'll go Josh Downs, who all reports point towards him being the wide receiver number 1 over in Indianapolis. So many running backs have came off the board to where the running back range is gross. But again, we drafted those big 3 early. We need to be confident in them. At some point, we need to draft a tight end. I don't think in your home league any of these tight ends would be available at this point, so we won't pick them, and we'll just completely punt the tight end position and take 2 late. So this kind of seems like the kind of team where we can't take 2 tight ends. We might just take 1 and then go with just 1 more running back, and I think that might be the play here. So we'll go wide receiver, running back. We'll go with Emeka Egbuka, who all the signs are pointing towards him just being amazing in training camp. He looks very good in all the clips that I've seen, and there have been no positive notes about Chris Godwin, which tells me we're going to see a lot of Egbuka. And then we're going to go ahead and get a running back here and then draft our solo tight end and just hope he works out. And if he doesn't work out, we'll go with a different running back. We will go ahead and take Blake Corum here. He does seem like the handcuff for Kyren Williams right now, but I wouldn't say that's like a guarantee to be the case start of season. And then we're just going to go with the highest upside tight end. We'll go with Dalton Kincaid. He is banged up, but if he is healthy, there's always been positive news about Kincaid. I've always thought Kincaid was good. It's just kind of, can he actually do it? Which just has not been the case. So if he doesn't work out a few weeks from now, we would just drop him like it's hot. And then we'll take the Rams defense because we stream defenses and they are the best defense currently available. They have a soft serve cupcake ice cream matchup in week 1 up against a dog shit Houston Texans offensive line. So we get a C-. I don't understand that at all. I think this team is great. We got Brock Purdy, Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane, Cortland Sutton, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, Omarion Hampton, Xavier Worthy, JJ McCarthy, the LA Rams defense, Geno Smith, Jordan Addison Ray, Josh Downs, Emeka Egbuka, and Blake Corum. I think we got some solid value. It was a little bit of a reach on JJ McCarthy. We might have been able to wait, but I do have McCarthy ranked ahead of CJ Stroud, I believe. And at least in my head, I like JJ McCarthy more than I like CJ Stroud. So I do feel pretty good about this team overall. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you want the draft guide, check it out. $12.50, link in the video description over on Patreon. Make sure you guys do check out Underdog, promo code Notorious to get that free pick, get the deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash, and get my draft guide. I love you guys long time. This is the only SuperFlex video we'll probably do all summer. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen it already. I love you long time. Have a great one. As always, good boy.